Welcome back, guys, and welcome to our new subscribers. Thank you guys for subscribing. Today we're going to talk about unraveling the mystery. Here's another controversial topic for diabetes or diabetics like us. Spuds, blood sugar, and diabetes management. Hold that thought. Let me do my quick medical disclaimer. YouTube, this channel is strictly a channel where I'm explaining my journey as a type 2 diabetic, how I was able to reverse my type 2 diabetes, blood sugar, and A1C. Although I am a medical professional or I have a medical background, that is not what this channel is about. Okay, let's get started. So, have you guys guessed what I'm talking about? Spuds, blood sugar, and diabetes management, guys. We're talking about the great potato. Everybody likes potato just like everyone likes bread and everyone likes rice. And guess what? We're told we can't eat that as a diabetic, right? So, let's have a discussion about that today, guys. So can we as diabetics eat potatoes? Potatoes are a vital and widely consumed food, providing a beneficial nutrient. And nutrients like potassium and B vitamins, with the skin being a good source of fiber. I personally keep the skin on all my potatoes. I never take the skin off. I like the flavor, and I think it provides a little bit more than just the potato itself. So for those with diabetes like us, there's a common belief that potatoes should be avoided due to their high carbohydrate content. I mean, all of our healthcare providers always tell us stay away from the white rice, the potatoes, the white flour, which they're correct. But there's ways around everything, right, guys? And that's the reason I have this channel, because I want to show you that you can live your life and be perfectly happy without making major compromises, just making changes in your lifestyle that will help you overcome your type 2 diabetes. So, however, this is not entirely accurate, right, in terms of potatoes being avoided. People with diabetes can indeed consume potatoes, but it's crucial to understand how they can impact blood sugar levels and to consume them in appropriate portions as well. This discussion provides comprehensive information on potatoes and diabetes, guys. So, how do potatoes affect our blood sugar levels as diabetics? Eating carb-rich foods like potatoes can lead to an increase in blood sugar as the body breaks down carbs into simple sugars that enter the bloodstream. This rise in blood sugar is known as a spike, which we always talk about, right? That's your spike, your glucose spike, or your blood sugar spike. In response, insulin is released to help transfer the sugars into the cells for energy use. However, in individuals with diabetes like us, this process is not as efficient, resulting in sugar hanging out in the bloodstream instead of being moved into the cells, as we have spoken about in previous videos, leading to elevated blood sugar levels. And I just got finished working out, and that's one of the reasons I work out, guys, because that sugar that's sitting in your bloodstream, you need to get rid of it. You need to burn the sugar out of the muscles, and you need to get the sugar that's in the bloodstream back into the muscles and out of your circulatory system. So consuming high carb foods in large portions can have negative impacts on those with diabetes. The problem is we love high carb foods. Our brain is tricked into wanting more and more carbs, right? And large portions, I can't speak for you, but for me, I used to love large portions. I don't do a lot of large portions anymore. I do a lot of smaller portions. And overall, what matters to me at the end of the day is my calorie intake. So I look at the calories that I'm taking in, because as you know and I know, that if you lower your body weight, if you're a little bit heavy, that's going to be very favorable to your blood sugar levels. It's been proven, and it's also worked for me. I was 205 pounds. I'm somewhere around 160, 165, give or take, any given day, and it has definitely helped me. So poorly managed diabetes is associated with health issues such as heart failure, stroke, kidney disease, nerve damage, amputations, which we all hear about, right? Toes being amputated and things like that. And of course, vision loss. That's why your doctor, every now and then your doctor will ask you, when was the last time you had a vision exam? So as a result, it's often advised for people with diabetes to control their daily intake of digestible carbs, which can range from a strict limit of 20 to 50 grams per day to something a little bit moderate in terms of 100 to 150 grams per day. The exact amount depends on individual dietary preferences and medical goals. So we're all different, like everything else that we talk about on this channel with regard to a food that affects us as diabetics. So to summarize this, potatoes cause a rise in blood sugar as carbs are converted into sugars that enter our bloodstream. In people with diabetes like us, the clearance of sugar from the blood is not as effective, which we already know, resulting in high blood sugar levels and potential health complications. So, what's the carbohydrate content of potatoes? Have you ever thought about that? Potatoes have a high carbohydrate content, right? We know that. Although the exact amount can differ based on the cooking methods. So this is the key here. So I know in the past you've been told not to eat potatoes, you can't eat potatoes, but I figured out that I can eat potatoes through a little research and a little trial and error. So here's the carb count for a half cup, which is about 75 to 80 grams of potatoes prepared in different ways, right? So if you eat it raw, the carb count's about 11.8 grams. I don't know anyone that eats potatoes raw. If you boil potatoes, the carb count is about 15.7 grams. Baked would be about 13.1 grams. If you put it in the microwave, it's about 18.2 grams of carbs. So if you make oven baked fries, you get about 17.8 grams. And if they're deep fried, French fries, crisps, whatever it is that you call it in your country, those are pretty high because of the fat content, whatever they use to fry it, 13.6 grams. So a small potato, which is about 170 grams, typically contains about 30 grams of carbs, while a large one, which is about 369 grams, has somewhere around 65 grams of carbohydrates. This means that a single serving of potatoes, which is often larger than a half cup, could contain double or more of the listed carbs, which makes sense. But we always eat more than a half cup, don't we? So from a comparison, a single slice of white bread contains about 14 grams of carbs. A single small apple, which is about 149 grams weight, has about 20.6 grams of carbs. A cup of cooked rice, which is 158 grams weight, has about 28 grams of carbs. And a 12-ounce can of cola, which roughly weighs about 350 milliliters, contains about 38.5 grams of carbs. So what does this really mean to us, guys? The carb content in potatoes ranges from 11.8 grams in a half cup, which is about 75 gram potato of raw potatoes, to 36.5 grams in a similar serving of deep fried potatoes. So there's a huge difference, right? However, the actual serving of the popular root vegetable, or this popular root vegetable, is frequently much larger than this. Like we just talked about, who eats a half cup of potatoes? That's not even realistic, right? So, do we have to ask the questions, are potatoes high on the GI scale or the GI index? Well, a diet centered around glycemic index foods can be beneficial for individuals with diabetes in controlling their blood sugar levels. Now remember, guys, in my previous videos, we always talked about the GI index, the glycemic index, but more importantly, I told you I've been able to figure some things out with some research and some trial and error by utilizing what's called the GI load or the glycemic load, which is a combination of all the foods together and how it impacts your body in terms of blood sugar response or insulin response. Meaning, everything on your plate does not have to be perfect, right? You can have something that's probably not the best for you as a diabetic, but when it's combined with the other foods on your plate, the other foods help lower the glycemic index of that particular food when eaten together as a whole, which is now called the glycemic load. Hope that makes sense. So the GI is a scale, or glycemic index is a scale that determines the impact of a food on blood sugar compared to a reference, such as 3.5 ounces, which is 100 grams of white bread. Foods with a GI over 70 are classified as a high GI, meaning they elevate our blood sugar very rapidly. Conversely, foods with a GI below 55 are categorized as low. This is something we talk about all the time. As a diabetic, you should know this. This is very important. While potatoes generally have a medium to high glycemic index, the glycemic index isn't the most accurate measurement of a food's effect on blood sugar levels, as we talked about earlier. as it doesn't account for portion size or cooking method. A more precise measure is what we call the glycemic load, which is something we always talk about. I never go into such detail about it, but now I guess we'll talk about it a little bit more. And this is calculated by multiplying the glycemic index by the actual carbohydrate content in a serving, right? Then dividing the result by 100. A glycemic load under 10 is considered low, while a glycemic load over 20 is high. I've never gone over this before, so this is the first time I'm going over this with you guys. So you guys are learning the little tricks to get around and to continue to be happy eating the things that you would want to eat that aren't really bad for you, by combining these things with other foods that will help mitigate the blood sugar spikes in the system. A low GI diet typically aims to keep the daily glycemic load itself below 100. So how does potatoes, or the variety of potatoes, affect the glycemic index and glycemic load? Have you ever even considered that? Because we just buy potatoes at the supermarket, and I don't know if you say, well, these are red potatoes, I'm going to buy these instead of the russet potatoes, and vice versa, or, but there are different types of potatoes. We'll talk about those potatoes now. So the glycemic index and glycemic load of potatoes can differ based on the variety and cooking method. So depending on how they're cooked and the type of potato differs. For instance, a 1 cup, which is 150 gram serving of potatoes, can have a medium or high or low glycemic load depending on the type. So what that really means is, an example, a Desiree potato that's mashed is going to have a glycemic load. French fries will have a glycemic load. A white potato will have a medium glycemic load. Russet Burbank potatoes will have a medium glycemic load. A Pontiac potato will also have a medium glycemic load. And a Desiree, which you mentioned above, which were mashed above, which were high because they're mashed, if the Desiree potato is boiled, it has a medium glycemic load. Charlotte potatoes also has a medium glycemic load. Potato crisps and instant mashed potatoes are considered to have a medium glycemic load. I'm not a big fan of anything instant. Instant means processed, and you know what? Diabetes is a processed food disease. So I try to stay away from that if I can help it. Get the real deal the way Mother Nature intended, in its own packaging, which is the skin. So on the low glycemic side, the two potatoes that I see are the Charisma potatoes and the Nicola potatoes. So keep that in mind. Those are low on the glycemic load side. Okay. So for individuals like diabetes, for individuals with diabetes like us, selecting potato varieties like Charisma and Nicola can help slow down the increase in blood sugar levels following a meal. So the big two here are Nicola and Charisma. Those are the ones that are low on the glycemic load. We've gone over the others. You can just rewind the video if you need to refer back to it and take notes. All right, so let's talk about how to lower the glycemic index and glycemic load of a potato. Did you guys even know you can do that? Because if you did, you probably wouldn't be watching this right now, right? So I'm happy to share this information with you guys, and this is exciting information because, yet again, there's a food that they said we cannot eat as diabetics that we're able to eat. So how do you prepare a potato can impact its glycemic index and glycemic load, right? Cooking methods that prolong the duration, such as boiling or baking, can raise the glycemic index. However, cooling potatoes after cooking can boost the presence of resistant starch, a type of carb that's harder to digest, thereby reducing the GI or the glycemic load by 25 to 28%. That's a quarter to a third of a percent. That's huge, guys, right? So have you heard of this before? You put it in the refrigerator and you cool it off before you eat it. So this makes a potato salad a potentially better option than French fries or a hot baked potato for most of us diabetics. French fries have more calories and fat due to their cooking technique because of the type of oils that they're using and the fact that they're using oils, period. Oils are high in fat and high in calories, right? Including the potato skin provides extra fiber, which I talked about earlier. I just love the potato skin. And combining it with protein and fats can slow down carb digestion and increase of blood sugar levels. For instance, adding 4.2 ounces, which is 120 grams of cheese, to a 10.2 ounce, 290 gram baked potato can lower the glycemic load from 93 to 39. That's huge, guys. Think about that. The glycemic load at 93 all the way down to 39. That is huge. Nevertheless, it's crucial to remember that this amount of cheese also contains 42 grams of fat, and nearly adds 400 calories to the meal. So if you're watching your calories, which you should be at some point in your journey, keep that in mind. So nothing's free. You're not getting anything free here. You got to pay the piper sometime down the road. Okay. Therefore, with I apologize, guys. That's my dog chewing his bone again. They just love hijacking my videos. So let's move on. Therefore, while a low GI and GL diet can be beneficial for people with diabetes, it's also essential to consider the total carbohydrate intake and the quality of the diet for weight management. So what are the risks of eating potatoes? Everything has a risk. For many diabetics like ourselves, consuming potatoes is generally safe, as we're talking about today, but it's vital to monitor the quality and varieties that we choose. Potato consumption might not only heighten the risk of type 2 diabetes for those with prediabetes, but also worsen the situation for those who already have diabetes like us. So those that are pre-diabetic, if you're pre-diabetic, pay attention, guys. A study involving 70,773 participants showed that weekly intake of 3 servings of boiled, mashed, or baked potatoes could raise type 2 diabetes risk by 4%. However, French fries showed a more significant risk increase by 19%. So that's huge. So I never eat French fries ever. Right? So I would advise you to try to do that as well. Fried potatoes and potato chips contain substantially unhealthy fats, which can elevate blood pressure, metabolic syndrome, right? Blood pressure, decrease HDL, good cholesterol, metabolic syndrome, and contribute to weight gain, metabolic syndrome, and potentially lead to obesity, metabolic syndrome. These factors are interconnected with heart disease, a common concern for diabetes patients. Metabolic syndrome, guys. So given that weight management is crucial for type 2 diabetes control, it's recommended to avoid fried potatoes, potato chips, and other high-fat potato dishes. If you experience challenges in managing your blood sugar levels and diet, always consult your healthcare provider, your dietitian, or your diabetes educator for help, like we always recommend. All right, so we're not saying you have to replace potatoes because you can't eat potatoes, but let's talk about some replacements. Are there good replacements for potatoes if you don't want to eat potatoes? You don't even want to take the risk? Well, if you have diabetes, consuming potatoes is not forbidden, guys. But you might want to moderate your intake or substitute them with healthier choices. Opt in for nutrient-dense, low-carb, and low GI and GL foods like the following. I know many of you may not want to hear this, but we'll go over it anyway. Carrots and parsnips are excellent alternatives due to the low GI and GL, which is your glycemic load, as well as their carb content, which is under 10 grams per 2.8 ounces in an 80-gram serving. They can be enjoyed boiled, steam, or bake. So carrots and parsnips, if you like carrots, carrots are great. Sometimes just snacking on carrots with ranch dressing or something is great. So cauliflower, this is a big one. I think this is a popular one for us diabetics too, right? People talk about cauliflower and that they get the flour that's made from cauliflower and they make pizza crust and all that stuff with it. But cauliflower is a versatile vegetable that can be prepared in various ways, including boiling, steaming, or roasting. It contains minimal carbs, making it ideal for individuals on a strict low-carb diet. Us. So pumpkin and squash are now in carbs and have a low to medium GI and GL. They're now in the carb category. They make a perfect substitute for baked and mashed potatoes. Taro, T-A-R-O, is another low-carb option with a glycemic load of only 4. It can be thinly sliced and baked with a little oil as a healthier alternative to potato chips. I believe it's cassava. I'll have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure it's cassava in other countries. Different names, yucca, cassava, taro. Sweet potatoes have a lower GI than certain white potatoes and range between medium and high glycemic load. They are also an excellent source of vitamin A. So here's an option. I make, and I've had sweet potato fries baked on a bacon dish in the oven. No oils. A little salt, a little pepper, maybe a little Parmesan cheese, make it nice and tasty. That works too. I mean, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's a nice substitute. So while legumes and lentils are typically high in carbs, your kidney beans, all your different types of beans, navy beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, they have a low glycemic load and are rich in fiber. I'm big on beans also. I love beans. However, portion control is essential as they still contribute to increased blood sugar levels. So I just said I love beans, so I snickered, I laughed because I like to eat a lot of beans. So when they mentioned portion control is essential, they're correct. So I have to keep that in mind as well. I'm not perfect. A smart strategy for minimizing high carb food portions is to fill at least half of your plate with non-starchy vegetables such as broccoli, leafy greens, cauliflower, peppers, green beans, tomatoes, asparagus, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, cucumbers, and lettuce. So instead of potatoes, you can consider low carb alternatives like carrots, pumpkin, squash, parsnip, and taro. For high carb choices with a lower glycemic index and a lower glycemic load, sweet potatoes, legumes, and lentils are suitable options for us. So what's important here in this whole discussion, guys? Potatoes can be a delightful vegetable for anyone, including those with diabetes. Nevertheless, due to their considerable carb content, it's crucial to moderate portion sizes, ensure the skin is included, and select lower GI varieties, as we discussed, such as the Nicola and Charisma. Moreover, it's advisable to opt for boiling, baking, or steaming while avoiding fried potatoes or potato chips, which are high in calories and unhealthy fats. So should you encounter difficulties in making these nutritious choices to manage your diabetes, guys, do consult with your healthcare provider, dietitian, or diabetes educator for assistance. So yeah, so how do I eat potato? I'll give you guys a couple examples of what I do with potatoes. Like with potato salad, as long as it's been sitting in the fridge for a while, let's say overnight or so, it turns into a resistant starch. And once that's the case, I don't heat it up, obviously. I take it out the refrigerator and I eat it just like that, cold, just like everyone else eats potato salad. But once you put it in the refrigerator is the key, guys, for resistant starches. So any potatoes, I don't do French fries, obviously. I don't do fried potatoes, anything fried, but any potatoes, let's say red potatoes, let's say those were made in, I don't know, in a frying pan with butter, real butter, which is better for you than the other stuff, the real organic butter. And they were in the refrigerator and you need to take those out. You can eat those cold or you can heat them up as well, but it's still a resistant starch at that point. So the glycemic load is going to be better and the glycemic index. But it's not something you're going to be eating by itself, obviously. You're going to be eating it with other foods to help make that glycemic load the most important factor to keeping the blood sugar stabilized. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please like the videos, share it with other diabetics, because it's very important, because I don't see that diabetics are getting the information that I'm providing on this channel. I see that they're getting all the regular cookie cutter information, but I'm providing firsthand real information from a real diabetic that actually worked for me or didn't work for me, and I'm putting you on that path where you can try it and talk with your healthcare provider to see if it's going to work for you. That way you're not all over the place, because all the research today is showing that they'll say, well, potatoes are bad for you, potatoes are good for you. Potatoes are bad for you, potatoes are good for you. Well, what is it, right? Like with everything else in diabetes, what really is the answer? That is left to you to figure out as a diabetic, and it's not an easy thing to do. So I've done all of the work, and I'm just here to put you on that path and point you in the right direction so you can just move down the road and find success later down the road with the help of the advice that I'm giving you and the advice that your doctor is going to provide, and of course some common sense and moderation and those kinds of things. Not a huge lifestyle change, but just something that you'd have to do remain happy as a diabetic and continue to eat the things that you want to eat without worrying too much. Okay? So that's it, guys. That's all I got to say. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video.